Welcome to this edition of Diligent Institute's Inside Today's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, and I'll be your host for today's show. Today, we're going to be talking about how to add the right cyber expertise to your board. And joining me to have this discussion is Julie Daum, who's the North American Board Practice Leader for Spencer Stuart, and Eric Zakre, who's a Principal Technology and Digital Officer Practice with Spencer Stuart. So welcome both Julie and Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, it's no secret that cyber is a big issue and that boards are having to deal with it. But let's sort of dig down a little bit, Eric. So why is having cyber expertise at such a premium for today's corporate boards?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've all seen the SEC's proposed amendments to its rules regarding disclosures for cybersecurity risk management and how that impacts governance in the boardroom. This is a response to what I think are two key drivers to why cyber expertise and really technology expertise more broadly has become so important for corporate boards today. So I like to call them defensive drivers and offensive drivers. On the defensive side, cybersecurity attacks and broader technology risk pose extensive threats to companies. We've all seen the parade of some of the high-profile cybersecurity breaches, from Target in 2013 to Equifax in 2017, Twitter in 2021, and then technology risk. So the risk that a major technology outage cripples a company's operations is really ever present. Southwest Airlines in December 2022 first comes to mind as an example of this, but there are many other examples. So corporate boards need to have the expertise to ask management the right questions and ensure that leadership teams are taking a thoughtful approach to managing these types of risks. Secondly, offensive drivers. So as technology becomes an even more critical and important component for nearly all companies' business strategies and operating models, it's becoming more important than ever before that boards are fluent in technology and digital topics. Is management leveraging technology as a competitive advantage? Is business leadership considering how technology may change business models or customer expectations in the future? These questions will continue to distinguish, in our mind, industry leaders from industry laggards. So it's clearly really important topic, and yet boards don't yet have this true expertise in the boardroom. So of the 456 new independent directors who joined S&P 500 boards in 2021, only 18 of them, which is just under 4%, have experience actually leading a function such as cybersecurity, information technology, software engineering, or data analytics.
So, Julie, I understand the uniqueness of finding a board candidate that has the right skill set, and becomes even more challenging when you try and find that skill set plus a broad business experience. So it wasn't that long ago that we had a mini rush to go out and find sort of anybody that sort of was focusing in their day business, in the cyberspace. But then the experience with that was a lot of people ended up with what I'll call single focus directors that were good with cyber, but really couldn't contribute sort of outside that narrow, sort of bandwidth. So what's your experience? And by the way, the response to that was, I'm not sure everybody was happy, with what happened at that time with single focus directors. So what's your experience today, with both the past in that occurrence and what's being looked for today?
So I think the one thing that we always have to keep in mind is that boards do not have many opportunities to add directors. Only 7-8% of board seats turn over in a year. So each time that happens, it's valuable real estate, and you're trying to get as much as you can in one person. So I think that's really important to remember. And I think that boards have come to realize that you cannot have directors who just plug into a certain spot, because boards are small, because they are there for a long time, tenure is long. You need people who can engage in many conversations and not just pipe up when it turns to whatever their area of expertise is. So I think this has been an issue for people who had digital backgrounds. This was a big push a couple of years ago. And, if you're looking for an audit person, you don't want someone who can just chair your audit committee. You need someone who can think broadly about finance. I think the same is true here. It's valuable real estate, and every director needs to be able to contribute in their area, but they must be able to think strategically and contribute to all board discussions, and not just sit back and wait until it turns to their area. And again, I think this is because we talk about this so often, but the fact that there's just not a lot of new people entering the boardroom, that each person who comes in has to be able to contribute quite a bit.
So, Eric, that brings us to the $1 million question. So how should a board go about adding the right cyber expertise to their board?
Yeah, it's challenging, and it can be, I think, intimidating in a lot of cases because, boards have not spent a lot of time, recruiting leaders like this in the past and having members like this join and interviewing individuals like this. So, the first thing I always recommend is to really spend time thinking through what types of expertise different prospective board members might bring. So, for example, a CEO from a household brand name in Silicon Valley might have really exciting brand cachet. But there's a difference between, if that CEO had been a CTO coming up in their career, or if they had been in the sales and marketing function, right? So holding that role today is not a silver bullet, right, to this problem. And it sort of depends on the kind of path someone took on their way up. Meanwhile, a chief information security officer, to Julie's point, might be tremendously additive on cybersecurity topics, but may have less to contribute in conversations about threats of business model disruption or some of the things that we talked about earlier. So, in my experience, I think executives who come from a chief information officer, chief technology officer role can often bring a nice balance, as they often play the business technology leadership role. But, at the end of the day, really thinking about the problems we're trying to solve and then reverse engineering our way into the kinds of backgrounds that would solve for those problems depending on the context of your business. So I think that's number one. Two is, Julie and I have learned over the last 24 months that there's real value for a board in the learning that happens through a search process, right? So, we've talked about different trade-offs that might come with different types of, quote, technology experts. And it can be helpful for boards, when one of those rare opportunities comes to appoint a new director, to, we call it taste different flavors, right, of what the different versions might mean and might bring. Third point that I think is important to state, if you are working with a search partner, really to press to make sure that you have the right team working on your behalf. I think the best search teams would be comprised of both an expert in governance and board search and experts in technology leadership who actually know the CIOs and the CTOs and the information security officers that you might want to be considering. Because many of these technology executives, in many cases, have not yet served on a corporate board before, working with a team that knows those individuals and has a point of view on their relative strengths and and has relationships with them can be really valuable. Can be really valuable as you're going through a search process.
So, unfortunately, we don't have time to dig in, and it's a very important topic, and particularly when many of the sitting directors didn't have to deal with this during their business careers. So it sort of narrows the field for anybody doing a search. But we've only just scratched the surface, and you guys have an interesting report on this. Where can people get a copy of your white paper on cybersecurity and the board, which you guys recently published, Julie?
Very simple. Go to the Spencer Stuart website and type in cybersecurity and the board, and it'll pop right up.
Well, it's going to be important for all directors going forward, and I want to thank you both for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that will conclude this edition of Diligent Institute's Inside Today's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take another look at a critical topic that'll help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.